shit. Well, make sure your mic sounds good.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can everyone see the bill report?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Laura, we still have some people joining, so we'll give it another minute and we'll get started.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We are finishing week 4 of the 9-week session, so we're almost halfway there. We'll go through. I've got something that broke this week that I'm going to talk a lot about here. That's part of the reason things are being held up this year. We did have some activity with some bills, but none that were overly important, none that I've really even included in my report so far. And a lot of that is just they got through, the first committee in one of the chamber or something like that. So I'll work on those this weekend, just make sure everything's still good with those, and we'll move on. But anyway, Wednesday morning, a bill was filed from the Transportation and Economic Development Committee in the House. So at the time, it was called PCB TED 25-01. That's now been given a number. It passed out yesterday afternoon out of that committee. So now it's been given a number, and it's House Bill 5501. And what that bill does is directs doc stamp tax revenue from several trust funds to general revenue. Obviously, the most important one to us as a group is the Transportation Trust Fund, which would see an impact of about $466.8 million that would come out of that trust fund and go to general revenue. The reason for this bill, and Derek, feel free to jump in. I know you had a conversation with some folks the other day on Wednesday, is this is just kind of it is a political squabble going on between the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, who don't seem to be getting along very well right now. The House Speaker is upset because he feels as though the priority legislation coming from him in the House isn't being heard and isn't being moved by the Senate. So he puts this up. This is just kind of a, we'll throw all of these projects back on the table, and, deal with it that way. So definitely a bargaining chip, but dangerous nonetheless. The effect of all of that, well, let me go on and finish up with that. It also seems as though like the governor's office right now isn't negotiating with either side. So, a lot of things are being held up as they jockey for position here. But the effect of it right now is a lot of the agency packages are held up. The only one I know of that's passed so far is FDOT's package, and that's made it through one committee on the Senate side. It hasn't been heard on the House side. So all of that stuff is just kind of sitting. So if you've got an interest in, DEP or DBPR or any of those big agency bills, this is holding them up. And I also think there's one we were looking at that's down further on the list, Senate Bill 1264 and House Bill 1125. Those are regional planning bills, but it has language in it that would exempt Space Florida from CCNA requirements, which that's what got our interest. But I would bet, I haven't heard for certain, but all this regional and rural county stuff that you see, all of that is high priority for the Senate president. And so I think those are being held up as well. The effect of all of this is that I'm afraid what's going to happen here is they start to negotiate, which they always do when they get in this position, but they will, start dropping this stuff really fast, and we'll be much closer to the end of session. So we'll have to be on our toes for that. With them not moving right now, there's just really not much anybody can do. What will happen with this bill 5501 is, or this is what I would assume, is that it's now passed out. It's got its number. I would assume it's going to sit for a little while, maybe go through one more committee on the House side, but it's going to sit for a little while because it'll be part of the budget negotiations. And those usually happen, the last couple of weeks of session. So still a long ways to go. We've got 5 weeks to go. So, and we'll be watching those really closely. Just a couple of other things I would mention. Now, this is
Alan,
Yeah.
may I?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, this is JW. I went to that House Committee hearing yesterday at the request of FDOT. This is a big deal to the DOT, this Transportation Trust Fund sweep. They're estimating between a $3 and $5 billion impact on the work program over the 5 years, including some high priority projects around the state. They've asked for our help in developing a strategy moving forward about how we address this trust fund sweep. There was also a provision in the original bill that stripped out some of the local county funding for scrap and trip. But then the representative Schoaf, who's the chair, said it didn't impact that. So I'm waiting on some clarification. And the bottom line is FDOT is asking us to engage on this moving forward, but we don't have a strategy yet. So Derek, I'd like to, and Alan, I'd like to talk to you guys possibly even later today or early Monday morning. We've got a scheduled meeting with Secretary Perdue on Secretary Perdue at 3:00 on Tuesday. I'm sorry, on Monday for some other items, but I'm sure this is going to be a big topic. So I'd like to maybe kibitz with you guys on Monday morning to figure out something I can take into them as a strategy moving forward. And Greg, I saw your chat. The funds are being swept just into general revenue. One opinion I had heard was that it is going to be used to offset Speaker Perez's desire to lower the sales tax. So kind of hold on to some revenue. It'd be reassigned to other programs to counter that lowering of the sales tax. But anyway, I appreciate it, Alan. Thanks.
Sure,
Thanks,
no
Derek.
problem. Derek, do you have anything you want to add from your conversations?
I mean, yeah, I'll just add in that, this is the speaker came into session saying that we're going to have a lean budget, that he wanted to ask a lot of questions as to how monies are being appropriated. As you mentioned about the doc stamp bill, I mean, it dropped. Communications already come out from the governor's office that they were not giving a heads up on it, that they basically learned about it when everybody else learned about it. And, the governor sees it as they're rolling back things that were put in place. Part of some of that money is Live Local, which was the top priority of the then Senate President Kathleen Passidomo, along with other things that JW mentioned, a few other things that's in there as well. These are large dollar items, right? And so the speaker argues that, we want to put them back. We want to put them in GR, right? And then ask questions like, should we continue appropriating this amount of money to each of these individual projects? Are we getting the efficiencies we say we're going to get? What's the ROI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, he's rolled out the proposal to take the sales tax from 6% down to 5.25, right? And so there's a dollar amount that go with that. But this is hefty. Some could argue you're undoing some legacies. He's arguing that we cannot continue spending recurring money as we've been doing, right? The economists have reported that, if we don't make some changes, that we are nearing pre-recession in that regard. And so we got to make some changes. So coming in, he had been saying coming in as speaker that he wanted lean budgets. He's been very consistent about that. If you meet with him or his team, especially in the House, they're all saying it's going to be a tight budget, tight budget, tight budget. I will tell everyone, like I've been telling people, buckle up. It's going to be a very bumpy ride to the finish line. The governor yesterday released a video and put it on X where he basically, went after the Republican House and called into question their motivations. And, it's these are not just, activities that's doing this for fun. Like, this is really some strain. The speaker has some ideals and he wants to put them out there. And so I'm certain the department wants us to engage because they're definitely not being consulted with. Neither is the governor's office. And they're on the same level as the rest of us. They're finding out things when we're finding out things, and so I'm certain they want some assistance in that regard. We can definitely talk about it. I want us to be mindful of all angles that we should talk through in that regard. But this is going to be a very bumpy ride to the finish line. And I never say that we won't finish on time, right? I think they always figure it out in the end. But the tone and tenor that's brewing, right? They have to kind of come figure out how to bring this plan in for Atlanta to get to a balanced budget, and they're so far apart. That also adding Alan, I'll be done after this. You got to add in also the rural renaissance. Number one priority of Senate President Ben Albritton has his own large fiscal note on that as well, right? So it's a lot of monies being talked about, whether in savings or investments, that need to be talked through. Part of also, I think JW mentioned that, part of also that's in the doc is, there's some impact to moving Florida forward, right? So all those things are now, the House wants to put them out there. Let's talk through it. Have way more control over how we're appropriating these dollars.
Sure. Well, absolutely. If you'll just send me a good time for you on Monday morning, I'll get that set up with JW. Because certainly we need to talk about, I've been through this a number of times too, that it's a dangerous thing to wade into, because you got three different legs of the stool, so to speak, House, Senate, and Governor, who are in three different places. And, you run a real risk, you start messing with it, you're going to make somebody up, you're going to upset somebody. And so definitely something we need to talk about as far as strategy. So thank you, Derek. Let me go back to my paper here. A couple that I wanted to bring back up, because and again, a lot of these have not moved. These bills haven't, but this is the Board of Business and Professional Regulation, the department. 1452 and 1461 would abolish the Board of Professional Geologists and move all functions of that board under the department itself. And then also the Board of Landscape Architecture would be abolished and would then be put under the current Board of Architecture and Engineering and Interior Design, and then be renamed the Board of Architecture and Landscape Architecture. They are abolishing the interior design portion of that and moving it elsewhere. So they're not getting rid of licensing or licensing requirements or anything like that. That all pretty much stays the same. It's just kind of a, shuffling the cards kind of thing. And it's part of the state's DOGE efforts for governmental efficiency. So, or that's the pitch anyway. So, we'll keep an eye on that one. Again, a big part of that is to make sure that the engineers don't get included in this. And so far, so good. I mean, we haven't seen anything or heard anything, and actually have heard that the engineers are going to be fine. So, but we'll believe that after they sign die. So, we'll be watching that pretty close. Secretary Perdue from DOT spoke to our group last week at PE Days. A very important part of the DOT package to him is the Florida Transportation Academy. And as it says here, to prioritize continued need for transportation industry workforce development programs. That includes everything from prisons to K through 12 and universities. So it's got a wide scope. JW, did you want to comment on that one? I know you've talked with them about that quite a bit.
Just that it's a priority. There is a role that pretty much just expands what we're already doing on a lot of fronts with their workforce development group. But both between that and the Research Institute, Transportation Research Institute, they're talking about really just kind of sets the stage and gives them a vehicle to actually start funding some of those specific priorities. Right now, it's just kind of a hodgepodge of how the department's coming up with the money. that if they set up this research academy or they set up this research institute, then they've got an umbrella that they can just, put lump funding on and then fund some of the sub programs out of that. So I think that's what their goal is with that mechanism.
All right, I appreciate that. The next one, this is the DMS bill 1532 and 1185. We brought it up before. I've talked to CLGR about it a couple times, last time being yesterday afternoon. This is removing all the statutory language. It references affirmative action or minority business enterprises, disadvantaged business enterprise. And I think that's kind of the one I'm getting more comments on because we have a lot of DBEs. CLGR, as of now, we're going to maintain our neutral status on this one. The bill hasn't moved, so maybe if it starts moving, we'll come back to CLGR with it and see exactly. I'm not sure there's much that can be done. I mean, again, this is all part of the DOE stuff and just a sort of a mirror of what's happening at the federal level. So, but we'll keep an eye on that one. I mentioned the regional planning bill. All right. So do we have any questions on that? And then I'm going to bring one up that wasn't on this list, but that was brought up on our earlier call.
I have a question on that bill. Is that the executive order from the White House that says that we have to sign a statement certifying that we do not have any, what was it, DBI businesses or policies that are against the president's executive order? Is that the same? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's not the same because it's an executive order from the president, but it's to accomplish basically the same thing. That put an end to these programs. Now I've seen in some other bills, because as far as Florida goes, there are a number of bills out there that do this in various agencies and other places. And I'm seeing the phrase economically disadvantaged businesses being brought up as kind of the replacement for all of this. I haven't seen any details on that. I don't know what would make a firm economically disadvantaged versus another firm, but it sounds like there's at least some talk going on about that kind of stuff. So that there would be a program. It's just, we don't know what that looks like yet. Where, Trump is kind of on the other side with these executive orders. It's just kind of here, do it. And, attest to the fact that you don't have any of these businesses. So,
Thank
but
you.
yeah, kind of in the same arena, but not exactly the same. All right, Michael, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you brought up House Bill 683 on our call earlier this morning, and some concern. Can you just kind of state your concern? Because this bill does like 4 different things. I just want to make sure we're on the right.
Right.
part.
So in the middle of those, after the turf grass stuff, which I don't understand, there's some language and I was hoping you guys could elaborate, but there's some language in there that says that counties or local governments won't be able, that the state would provide guidance on how they can choose contractors. And so just like to know more about that, because there's oftentimes where counties, they don't just go with the lowest bidder. And so I would wonder why the state would want to kind of handcuff county and local governments into using some procedure that they come up with. As engineers, we are very often coming up with the plans and specs that these contractors are submitting on, and then help the communities with the selection process. So just of interest to me, why they're doing that and who's doing it and what the intended outcome is.
Okay, I'm looking at the staff analysis that comes from the committee. Let me look down here. Is that the preemption part?
No, if you read the middle of the bill, I don't have it in front of me right now, but if you read the middle of the bill, it talks about just that, about selection of contractors, that the state will provide guidance on how to select contractors, and that the communities would not be able to deviate from that. Let's see what it says.
Okay, so I'm seeing language here. It says the bill provides that the state or any political subdivision which contracts for public works may not penalize a bidder for performing a larger volume of construction work for the state or reward a bidder for performing a smaller volume of construction work. Is it in that part? Because it
Yeah, well,
doesn't, in the analysis, it doesn't say anything like you're saying.
okay, that's different than what I can see in the bill. So if you read the bill straight, it doesn't have that in there. So that's news. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this was done. Hold on a second. Be nice if they put a date on these things. I tell you what, just so we're starting to get near the end of our time here. Why don't I just get with you today or Monday, and I'll go back and read the bill. It just, like you said, this thing starts out by,
Right.
local governments can't prohibit the use of artificial turf.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but-
it was the second part of that might be of interest to this group.
Right. Well, bills sometimes that seem innocuous aren't. So
That's right. They have something hidden. Yep.
so yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up,
Thanks,
and
Alan.
I'll get with you on the side.
Okay, great.
And that kind of does it for me. We've got about 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions, we're watching a number of other bills. Some of them are starting to move. We're going to have a bunch of them, coming up here in the next week or so that, they're not moving, so they're not going to have time to move, and we can start knocking some of those off of our list. But like I say, I think the biggest danger right now is that all of this stuff is, if they work it out and we don't go in to overtime or we don't go into a special session afterwards, this stuff's, probably going to dump on us here in the next few weeks. So we will stay on top of it. But does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, hey, Alan, this is David Hubbard with Way Engineering. Just out of curiosity, are you all tracking anything with House Bill 867, or is ACEC taking any particular position on it?
It doesn't sound familiar, but let me look it up real quick.
I'll put it in the chat, Alan.
Okay. And you said 867?
Yep.
Not something I've been following very closely. It is on my master list, but indemnification and insurance obligations for commuter rail transportation providers.
Yeah, this looks like it's kind of codifying the limit of liability between the rail operators and the DOT. And I didn't know if that was something that might have an impact on us.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it because that one does appear to be moving. Let me see what its companion is here. 916 is the Senate bill.
I was just thinking that if it limits the ability of the DOT to name third parties that are not the engineers, that,
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll take a look at it because on the Senate side, it did go through the Transportation Committee last week. So, and they've got it on the agenda for next week in the Judiciary Committee. So I'll get on top of that and make sure everybody's good with it. Do you have any specific? You're just looking for the information on it, or do you have a specific concern with it?
honestly, there's a lot in there, and
Okay.
so I'm not too smart on all that stuff.
Well,
This looks like it's trying to indemnify FEC and Brightline from the Tri-Rail Coastal Link.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not something that anybody would think that would open us up to more potential litigation, then I guess it's not a big deal.
Right. And I'll tell you what I can do is I'll get it to Laura, but there's been looks like a good analysis on it from the staff of the Transportation Committee in the Senate. I'll pull that up because it's a lot easier to read that stuff because there'll be a section in there where they say here's the effects of the bill, and it tells you what in the real world what the bill will do, which is easier to read than trying to glean out of a statute or a proposed statute exactly what they're after. So we'll get that out to everybody. And Laura, you want to just do we want to post that up on the website so people can get to it, or?
Well, I'm actually pulling it up right now for everybody to see. I'll have it in a link in the chat. There was a more recent House analysis too, just yesterday that I've posted.
Okay.
So the one that I just linked was the Senate analysis that Alan referenced, and then the one above that says recent House staff analysis is from yesterday.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, we got about a minute left. Does anybody else have any questions or a bill that they're interested in that we haven't reported on? All right. Well, hearing none, have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Alan.